Order, the Joplin Schools Board of Education special session, May 9th, 2017. Roll call, please, Pat.
Deborah Gould,
Here.
Jennifer Martucci,
Here.
Lauren Musser,
Here.
Sheriff Dermott,
Here.
Brent Jordan,
Present.
Derek Gander,
Present.
Jeff Coe.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would y'all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Over here.
That's good. That's good. All right. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we're doing like third grade.
First thing, we've got a few celebrations to share with everybody. Let's see. I thought we had some. Here it is, right here. Separate packet, okay.
There's a lot.
Are you? All right, celebrations. So at the Martin Luther King Jr. poster and essay contest, we had a group of North Middle School students elected to write an essay and design a poster for the annual NEA Martin Luther King Jr. poster and essay contest. The theme of this year's contest was Fulfilling Dr. King's Dream, Looking Back, Looking Forward. The results from the state competition have been announced, and congratulations are in order for Dakota Aggie, who placed first, and Annabelle Price, who placed second. So congratulations, girls. Next, Missouri National History Competition. The following students won either first or second place in the state's National History competition and are headed towards the national contest at the University of Maryland in June. So from South Middle School, Levi Stokesbury and Ken Kokelbeck, second place in the junior group documentary. Micah Fletcher, second place, junior individual documentary. Aubrey Christenberry, second place, junior individual performance. And then at the Joplin High School, Autumn Atchie and Hannah Crouch, second place, senior group exhibit. Bradley Bromhover and Sam Peterson, first place, senior group documentary. Kaylin Jordan, first place, senior individual website. And then the following students placed in the top 6 in the state. Bella Sutler and Alexis Henry and Ryan Zimmerman.
Good
So,
job with the names, guys.
now I know how people are with my name. Okay, next one, Teacher of the Year. Joplin Schools is proud to announce that Darren Morgan is the Joplin Schools Teacher of the Year. Darren currently teaches American history to 8th graders at South Middle School. He began his teaching career at Memorial Middle School in 2008, where he taught 7th grade history. He was also a 21st century coach at the Joplin High School for 2 years. Darren is one of the sponsors of the E-Leaders at South Middle School. He helps students put together a weekly news broadcast titled The Weekly Digest. Darren also sponsors a Risk Game Club and a philosophy club after school. Darren will represent Joplin School for Teacher of the Year for the state of Missouri. We're proud of Darren and the work he does with students every day. Next, we had the Golden Apple Award winners. There were 61 Joplin area teachers nominated for Golden Apple Awards this year. Teachers can either be nominated by students, parents, or other teachers. The banquet was presented on Thursday, May 4th by the Joplin Area Chamber of Commerce. And congratulations are for kindergarten to 2nd grade, Monica Bay at Jefferson Elementary School. 3rd to 5th grade, Christina Eldridge, also from Jefferson Elementary School. And then 6th to 8th grade, Christopher Dishman at North Middle School. So congratulations to those. It's like Jefferson's swept the elementaries. So good job. The All Academic Excellence Team. The 31st honor banquet was held. Senior Sam Gressmer and Joplin High School math instructor Brian Hancock, as well as senior Sarah Peterson and journalism instructor Mary Crane were recognized at the 31st Joplin Globe All Academic Award Team dinner on Tuesday, May 2nd at Missouri Southern. The academic program honors high school seniors and their most influential teachers are recognized. Judging for selection of the team is based upon high school cumulative GPA for 7 semesters and ACT and SAT scores.
The average score, by the way, was above 33.
Oh,
Of everybody
nice.
there.
Wow, very nice. And then the last item, national finalists in the Bright Schools competition. Congratulations to North Middle School students Haley Corey and Megan Poe, along with science teacher Miss Ball, have been named national finalists in the second annual Bright Schools competition. The competition is a collaborative effort of the National Sleep Foundation and the National Science Teachers Association that encourages students in grades 6 through 8 to explore the correlation between light and sleep and how it influences student health and performance. Under the mentorship of the teacher, teams of 2 to 4 students identify, investigate, and research an issue related to light and sleep. Using scientific inquiry, teams develop a prototype, create an awareness campaign, or write a research proposal for the competition. Each team then submits a written report detailing their project along with a 3-minute video showcasing their investigation. Projects are evaluated on the basis of several criteria, including scientific accuracy, innovativeness, and potential impact. The Bright Schools competition celebrates talent and ingenuity of our youth, providing students with opportunities to think critically. First, second, and third place national winning teams will be announced at the end of May. I hope to call them again. Congratulations. Okay, that's all of our celebrations for this evening. You should have the agenda there in front of you. Are there any changes to the agenda required? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
I move, Derek second. Please vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Derek?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. So next up is the consent agenda. Since we didn't change anything, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Go ahead, Lori.
Right. Sherrick moved, Lori second. Okay, please vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay, that passes. All right. And now the regular agenda. All right, Dr. Moss.
First item on the regular agenda is a presentation of superintendent goals. And,
Were our policies on consent?
oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
Number
Oh,
4
no.
is policy updates, right? Those aren't consent, are they? Were they? Oh, those were thrown
Yeah.
into
They
consent?
are.
No, the goals
Usually we
first.
talk about them.
Sorry,
Those usually aren't consent. We usually talk about those, don't we?
the goals?
No, the
No,
policy.
she's back on
Policies.
consent agenda.
Oh,
I know that you guys talk about them in the policy committee.
We do, but usually that's fine.
I mean,
It's fine. No, usually they're not on consent. So it's fine.
You want to pull it off consent?
No, it's fine.
okay.
I just thought that, well, I'll just explain, we already proved it, so it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Well, if you'd like to explain. I mean-
No, it's good. No, it's fine. No, well, there just was the one that was for first and final reading. And the reason we did that instead of a first and second reading is because what we did was we made a change last year, but then they came back and said, no, you don't need that change.
Okay.
So basically, it took it back to what it was before we approved it. So.
Was it BCB?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So that's why that's a first and final reading instead of a first and then going
Because
for a
it's back to
second.
what it
is
was to
because-
begin with.
Right, right. So
Okay, fair enough.
that's
right.
it.
Thanks for sharing.
That's it. But it's been approved, so it's fine.
Okay. Now, we ready for superintendent goals?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm
Oh, no,
sorry.
it's fine.
It's just a different thing, sorry.
Okay.
So you have a copy of the 3 goals that I set forth in that document, I
do
believe.
we have a PowerPoint? We don't.
Yes, we should.
It's behind you.
It's part of it.
Yes.
There it is.
There it comes.
Yep.
All
Okay.
right, and then you have the one before you. When I arrived, it was a whirlwind, and it's still a whirlwind of activities, but listening and learning has been my chief goal as I arrived. And then also, I was fortunate enough to meet with Dr. Ritter even prior to April 1st, and trying to learn as quickly as I can the Baldrige method, the systems approach that has been successful in the district over the last 2 years. So I'm trying to adopt that same vocabulary and language into my way of doing business. And so as I looked at goals that Dr. Ritter had presented to the board when he began his first 2 years, I looked at where I thought we were at this point, 2 years later, and things that would be a good fit for me coming into my work with the board and with the district. So that's how I arrived at the goals that I selected, which I tried to closely align to the district's mission and where we are in the process at this point. So you'll see those before you, and I won't in detail read each one, and it's been in your board packet, so you've had time to look at that. Some things I might highlight, however, is in the first performance indicator, when we're seeking to understand the system in place with an eye toward continual improvement, understanding the data, both process and performance, to identify gaps in campus equity. And that resource allocation and baseline data, those kinds of things are very important to me. And as Dr. Ritter has started to observe and point out to me, that I tend to have a strong sense of need around what's our baseline, where are we starting from? So as we're working toward that, that's what I put under the how. And then resource allocation is not always just about dollars and cents, but where do those dollars and cents get allocated in terms of resources? Can be anything from class size reduction to curriculum, choice of technology. All of those things need to have a look. And then what student performance data do we have currently? So we're looking at that also with our data committee, and had a good meeting last night around that. Looking at goal 2, which is to build upon the strategic plan that we're going to talk about in the next little bit, and that was developed with a lot of input over the last couple of years. I just want to look at that consistent, continuous improvement and root that into key performance indicators that have been identified in the district. And looking at that section, when I talk about expanding leadership development with a focus toward data and evaluation and looking at district systems, I'm anticipating something like taking our CSIP plans, which are custom to each campus, and then making those living, breathing documents that we're actually going to kind of roll into some of what the data committee's looking at, so that it becomes not only a compliance document for our title funding, but is it guiding our work throughout the year? That was what I had in mind as I selected that one. And then supporting the alignment of key systems, such as curriculum, its pacing, which I know Dr. Gill was working very hard at this point, but being consistently mindful of the balance between campus autonomy, but also what things do we need to be very systemic and systematic about across the districts, and finding those areas of excellence that we would want to then scale to the whole district. Finally, under goal 3, I thought it fitting with 3 new board members coming on board and me being new to the district as well, that we need to have a focus on strongly positive board and superintendent relationships, and through congruency and response to our district strategic plan. So that's what I was thinking as I put goal 3 before the board, and talking about strong communication and also evidence, not just of strong communication between myself and the board, but that we can exhibit for you that we are having strong communication from our stakeholders and from our teacher voice, and that's helping to inform our decisions as well. And so I think that helps to put you in a position of success as you move to governance, and trust can be built and credibility can be built through that process. So those are my goals. I would also point you to definitions of terms that are below those. Those are key to understanding some of the things that we're talking about through this plan. We talk about performance data, but we also talk about process data. I think that's where in the process data and how we do things, are we systematic? That's where we're going to find our increased efficiencies as we look at those. That can be everything as simple as how's a requisition made to how do we track student growth. So we'll be looking at those things.
Can I just say, Dr. Moss, that I appreciate the fact that in your goals you include your team that you know that you can't do all this by yourself.
Oh, no, I'm so
And so-
thankful for the leadership team and becoming even more astute to how fortunate I am to have them every day. The people that come alongside to help me is crucial, and I'm so pleased that they're smarter and know more about things than I do.
Well, I think you're setting yourself up more for success than failure than by saying, I can do all of this myself.
Oh, right.
I think bringing them in and adding them in as part of your performance and realizing that you can't do it all yourself. I think that's a good quality for our superintendent to have.
Thank
So-
you.
Any other questions, comments to share?
Looks good.
All right. And it's an action item?
Yes.
So, entertain a motion to accept the superintendent's goals as presented.
So moved.
Jennifer made the
Second.
motion, second by Deborah. Okay, please vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that passes. Okay, thank you.
Good job.
Well, thank you.
Good luck.
Mhm.
Be right there with you. Okay. Next up, strategic plan updates.
And just like the one previously, we have a document to show you. There we go. You're not going to see a whole lot of change on this from last year. We met with the teacher forum, the parent forum. This was all reviewed during that time, and very subtle changes that they wanted to the strategic plan that is currently in place. Those are highlighted for you because Goal 1 talks a lot about preparing every learner to be intellectually, socially, and physically ready. And our vision talks about empowerment up above that. They thought, I think it would be nice to add something about student empowerment. So when we say student empowerment, we are not by any means saying that we're abdicating control in the classroom, but you can find ways for students to take ownership of their learning, and it may be as simple as giving limited choices at the early grades, love and logic kind of philosophy there, plus deltas, getting feedback from the student. What have you learned? What do you still want to learn? And you can broaden that sense of responsibility as they get older. So we're looking for opportunities for students to take ownership of their learning and for learning to be personalized. That's the philosophy behind that piece. The other change, if you will scroll on down to Goal 3, you will see those highlighted through expansion of forums to include semi-annual summits of foreign groups. The parent forum, teacher forum, they thought it would be excellent if those groups could get together and they could give some feedback directly to teachers. So that's what we're talking about with a couple of our quarterly forums. And then under 3.4, the feeling among the groups was we've done a lot to look at reducing waste, and they wanted a more positive spin to that. We have found efficiencies in central office, and there have been positions that have been consolidated. So now we're looking at increasing efficiencies, and again, I think we're going to find that through a hard look at our process data. And then it was noted last night by a very observant teacher at our data committee meeting that we had not taken eliminating waste out of the action that you see on the left of that. So I would ask that we note also a change to say increasing efficiencies there as opposed to eliminating waste. And that is your strategic plan changes in a nutshell.
Just make a comment, right below that, you'll see the list of participants in the forum. So I think that's something very important to see how many representatives we had from the teacher forum, the parent forum, and even the student forum, that we've got a number of different voices coming to the table to help add to it, to make it something that everybody can own. So appreciate you including that also. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve those changes as noted by Dr. Moss, including Goal 3.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, a motion by Sherrick, second by Derek. Please vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Next up, JHS Finance Resolution. Is that you, Paul?
The refinance resolution?
Yep.
Yes, thank you, President
There we
Koch.
go.
I'd ask the Susan Smith, Director of Accounting, and Gilmore and Bell Bond Counsel, Jim Caldwell, and Joe Kinder with George K. Bond. Join us, please. This is an extension of the action that the board took February 28 when the board approved our negotiation with Bank of America. We had Bank of America was working with us, has been for a couple of years on short-term financing to help us pay off our, complete our building projects for the district, all the building we've done in recent years, permanent building. And so we had a short-term extension up through this June 1st. And in talking with them this past winter, leading up to the February 28 item with the board, we had the board had agreed to approve our negotiation with them for a longer-term item because it's the process of collecting obligations from FEMA and SEMA, the state agency. You know, they conduct their work with due diligence, and which we appreciate that. They're dealing with taxpayer funds, so we understand that. And we need to be patient and let the process work. And it's going to take a little longer than we had earlier anticipated to collect those revenues. So to allow for the collection of those revenues, we're going to plan on proposing to the board this evening a 3 to 4 year plan with this new proposal to get us out to the point where we fully collect those FEMA and SEMA revenues and can pay those down to Bank of America and have the financing in that piece of our refinancing of the building project. You see the action item there that I believe Pat included in your packet, and a separate debt service schedule that shows the amounts of payments of principals and interest over the years that we would be paying. We do expect to pay this off in 3 to 4 years. This was visited by the Board of Education Finance Committee in recent weeks and reviewed. The transaction does require a variable rate, which is why your hypothetical debt service schedule is hypothetical. The base rate is variable until 2 days before closing. I believe closing is planned for June 1st, is that right?
Correct.
So that variable rate will be locked in, fixed as of May 29, and that will combine with 1.05% portion of the rate that's already fixed. So under the hypothetical you see on your schedule there, lower right section, we're projecting at that date of May 29, the interest rate to be closer to 3.12% for the term of this refinancing. Again, the payments, the methods that we're going to use in terms of revenue streams to pay this financing off include the following. It's included in your action item, as well as distributed to the board in an update last Thursday. As of April 30, our balance due Bank of America is $14.4 million. Our payment streams to pay off the refinancings once we complete all of our collections are, we have an EDA equipment grant of $437,000. We have FEMA project obligations of $3.7 million. We have the state project obligations, which the state pays 10% of our project qualified expenses. FEMA pays 75%, which we're very grateful for both those agencies. The reason the FEMA obligation is lower than the SEMA, the state obligation, is FEMA is on a pay-as-you-go. When they finish a project and they're okay with our submittals, they'll fund the project. And we had a total of, was it 65 or 70 projects, Susan, throughout this whole ordeal. Some of them, you know, temporary rebuild projects, permanent rebuild, supplies, busing, all kinds of things. But so FEMA has been churning those for 4 or 5 years. SEMA's rules are they pay at the very end, the very last of the last to pay. When everything is complete and over, then they'll pay their obligations in one fell swoop at that time. And we have them down, obligations that they have indicated to us from determination letters are $5.2 million. And that would leave Joplin Schools with a $5 million sum of monies to pay from our set-aside of $1.5 million per year into our capital projects funds, and it'll accumulate for 3 years, 3 to 4 years amounts to equal that $5 million, which we plan to pay down 3 years to maybe slightly over 3 years, 3 to 4 years with those sums of monies collected, pay this down to zero. Even though the refinancing does go out past 3 to 4 years, that's just how the bank required us to write it. I believe, Joe, that we negotiated you want to comment on a call option, and we negotiated for an early call.
Yeah, Bank of America, basically the shortest call that they would allow us that would cost you the least amount was a 3-year call. So essentially, you're obligated to pay the principal and interest that comes due as it comes due for the first 3 years, and then after that, you can prepay the bonds, just the principal outstanding. But I believe that it has to be paid in whole, correct?
Correct.
We can't make partial prepayments. So once you have the entire principal amount to pay, you can, past that 3-year point, then you can go ahead and prepay all of that and do away with the interest costs that go along with it.
Okay. So, like I say, with that call provision, that'll fit us well, because that's when we expect to have these collected. And these are obligations. These are similar to a grant from an agency, and these are FEMA and SEMA take our submittals for our proof of payment for these costs on these buildings. They process all of these and give them close scrutiny and review, but they are, currently these projects are obligated for these sums of money, so we fully intend to collect all or most all of these. They've been collected at a high rate to date, so we're confident that these funds will come in. We do, part of our funding mechanism is to make maximum allowable transfers to the capital projects fund from the operating fund, which will lower our balances. I believe they're at, we anticipate, Susan, around 18%, give or take, as we close this year out.
Right.
So,
And when
and-
you're talking about operating, you're meaning reserves, operating reserves, not operating fund.
Savings.
Right.
yeah, operating reserves, savings reserves, yes.
Okay.
We're not going to affect the operating budget where we pay teachers, staff, lights, insurance. That'll be unaffected. We're going to, at a healthy balance today, we're going to systematically lower that over the next 3 to 4 years to put aside our payment of $5 million, coupled with these collections, to add up to the total of $14.4 million when that 3-year call date, 3.5 year, whenever that call date comes. So that's the method of payback. Again, this is a good, solid, well-negotiated arrangement. We appreciate George K. Baum, financial advisor, putting this together. The capital projects budget for next year, which I believe May 23rd, you'll be presented the capital outlay budget. It does include the interest and the principal payment that you're reflected here in the action items. So the administration does recommend the Board of Education adopt the resolution submitted by Gilmore Bell, Bond Counsel, to authorize the Series 2017 certificates of participation by amending the existing lease documents and authorize a continuing covenants agreement with Bank of America. And Bond Counsel with Gilmore and Bell, Jim Caldwell, Joe, Susan, handle any questions you may have.
I have some questions. So just to clarify, this is money that we borrowed, just to clarify, this is money that the district borrowed to rebuild the high school and other buildings?
Right, to help with it.
And we're paying that back?
Right.
The FEMA and SEMA obligations, those are for projects we've already done and paid for,
Yes.
and it's not errors and omissions?
No.
Okay.
Totally unrelated. This is money that we're expecting to receive.
So obligated means not errors and omissions, it's already
Right.
projects
It's-
we have
it's-
completed and paid for?
Right, similar to being approved for a grant, not exactly the same, but it gives you the confidence that they have obligated our projects for these monies, and if we submit all the invoices and the documentation and cross our Ts and dot our Is, and of course, there's questions that come. We've submitted all these projects since January of 16 through September of 16, I believe were that was the range of dates of our submissions. Is that right, Susan?
The last ones were.
So, over a year, and, and there's Q&A that comes from FEMA to SEMA to us and then back and that sort of thing, but it's been, so they've had our projects for that length of time, but yes, it's for These are what we consider to be operating funds, not the errors and omissions.
And do they generally refund us that money 100%?
It's been coming in at 97, 90, 96, 95%. There's been some write-downs, but been a very, very high collection rate.
So what is our plan, and just in case, worst case scenario, Plan B, we don't get that money?
Instead of $5 million worth of transfers, we could transfer for another half a year or something and cover some of the percentage write-downs that may take place.
And we're anticipating our savings to get down to 10 to 12%? Is that correct?
Right, from the 18% level, that it would drift down because we're transferring more over for this 3-year payout, yes. Now, just as a point of reference for the board and community, before the tornado disaster, we were at a 24% level of operating fund balance, which is a healthy level to be at. And our low water point during all the temporary rebuilding and permanent rebuilding, wasn't it 10.6 or 7, Susan, something just below 11%?
So that's 11.
Right. And I would never recommend going there. The state considers you, state of Missouri, their threshold's too low at distress at 3 or 4%. But we think to reach a 10 to 12% level is a good floor to feel comfortable with, and a point, once this is behind us, to build back from over time, to go back toward, with savings, toward 20, 25% over time. And we've been there before, and, you know, we can get back to that level with good planning and keep maintaining our balanced operating budgets like we had going into this year, like we're going to have going into next year. Operation has to stay balanced, and, you know, this will all work.
One thing I think that everybody needs to know, especially the public, FEMA is not going to go away for a long time. In other words, we're going to be constantly asking them to errors and omissions for money, okay? But this year should be short-term, but the long-term, it's still going to be more. And so I think the public needs to realize they're going to hear FEMA and SEMA in our conversation, in your conversation, I should say, in your conversation, I should say, over the next 2 to 3 years, I would say minimum. So you realize that. The public needs to know that. So,
Can I ask a question? How much have we already paid in interest in these loans? How much have the district paid in interest over the last, is it 2 years or 3 years? 3 years?
We started in August of 14. I don't have that number, Ms. Martucci, but I do know we've been budgeting up until this time about $300,000 a year in interest in the last couple of years.
So it's already cost us about $1 million just in interest?
$300,000 a year since
About-
August of 14 would be a
Like,
good
yeah, about
estimate.
3 years, so.
it'd be about 900,000.
Well, and I think we just paid
And-
$400,000 interest, didn't we?
Well, this
That's what
budget's for
they're-
$400,000.
That's what they're anticipating, so another 1.6 by the time this is paid off.
And the thing, the cornerstone of this is, or one of the cornerstones is, keep in mind that FEMA and SEMA, I think it's pretty obvious, but it bears repeating, they're on a reimbursement basis, so to complete the buildings that were designed, that our community, wanted, and that we built, we have to pay those costs up front. We utilized insurance, we utilized a bond levy approval, we utilized grants, donations, and to finish out the project, knowing that these obligations, of which we've collected millions to this point already, I don't know the exact number, but
Over 35 million
is what we've collected to date.
from FEMA, and that's big for safer reimbursements.
Okay, so we've already collected 35-some million. Knowing these were out there, that's where we asked the bankers to help us bridge the gap from what we built to what we need to pay off and pay in advance of reimbursement. So yes, interest cost is a reality of that arrangement, yes. But I don't know, Jim, is there anything else unusual, I mean, not unusual, but anything else you'd like to highlight about the transaction?
Can't think of anything. You know, we are just amending the original set of documents that we had in place when the first financing was done in 2014. So each time we've made a change, we've supplemented the original documents, and so that's the reason why you're being asked to approve some supplements to the original documents. It helps simplify the transaction by doing so.
And so, Paul, just put it out there. The only alternative then is to pay this 14 million out of our reserves. And if we did that, how much reserves would we have?
Well, I think we're
It's
at
okay.
18, we're at 18%, so how many million is that, Susan? Is that around 10 or 12% million?
Yeah.
I mean,
I only think we have
So
14
the state,
million.
the state would come in.
it's about 14.
If we
so
didn't do this,
yeah,
the
we'd have to
state
take
would
it
come
down
in.
to a lower level than we
Yeah.
want to.
So just to make sure that.
It's a continuance of what was started, really back to the design phase of the buildings, way back when, what we built and what we're required to pay. So it's a multi-year continuance of a plan that, really, it's the plan that we're faced with.
I think I can say that nobody on this board was on the original agreement.
Just thinking that.
I'll move that we adopt the resolution submitted by Gilmore and Bell Bond Council to authorize the Series 2017 certificates of participation by amending the existing lease documents and to authorize a continuing covenants agreement with Bank of America.
I'll second that.
Well, thank you. So motion by Sherrick, second by Lori. No further discussion, please vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, the
Thank you.
motion passes. Thank you, guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you for helping us.
Thanks, guys.
Next up, Paul?
Yes, this is the Employee Health Insurance Committee report, which I do have some help here. Matt, you want to join to represent the committee, please? Okay, sure, just take
These are the most vocal, by the way.
And just so the board, just to kind of prep the topic, Matt, the committee will report on their meetings and what they covered. This is like last year, the committee came end of April, gave a verbal report of the committee's work, which you all, most would remember, it was a very arduous task last year because our plan was, I believe, below, just down to several hundred thousand. We were having to pump money into it to get through the year. So last year, the committee met with the guidance of Healthcare Solution Group, kind of being our mentor, and advised us to take the big step to get our premiums up where they needed to be to fully fund the plan that meshed very well with reinsurance and not leave a funding gap for a bad year, which is what we had last year. We had that gap, we weren't funded correctly, and we had a bad health year, meaning a lot of utilization, which in this business happens randomly, and it happened last year. This year, as you know from the reports, our finances are much better, whereas last year was unusually high utilization. What we're seeing in reports this year is unusually low in utilization. So the reality is, over the long term, we should be somewhere in between on our cost in the plan, but it's good to follow a bad year with a very good year. But the committee is going to verbally just summarize their work and answer questions, and it'll be on the agenda for 23 May meeting for you to vote on the committee's work.
Good evening, welcome new board members. My name is Matt Harding, I'm principal of North Middle School. This is Christine Warden, she's a teacher over at Stapleton, and William Bontrager is a classified staff at Joplin High School. So we represent certified and classified staff. We were kind of the original committee to start off with, and so since then this is about year 2, just over a year we've been with the committee, and since then we've added more members. We realize that there are many facets to Joplin schools, and so we're trying to get as many members, as many stakeholders on the committee as possible, and we've done that. It's hard for all of us to meet all at the same time, so we're trying our best to kind of get out and reach out to everybody as well as possible, and because a big part of this is education. Ironic coming from an educator, but needing to educate ourselves about insurance, not only just insurance, but about our own plan itself and what it gives us and what it provides for us. Is we're trying to educate ourselves on that process, and at the same time, we're trying to educate people in our schools and in our district that are a part of the plan, exactly what that plan is and what they gain out of the plan and why some things are covered, some things aren't covered, and how that works. And so for the last over a year now, it's what we've been trying to do is really understand the plan and how it operates. And so we've had tremendous help, and Ms. Barr said that, from Healthcare Solutions. They've been a huge help in guiding us and educating us and how things work, and not just with our plan, but throughout the country on how, self-funded plans work and how Blue Cross Blue Shield works and on all the other different insurance carriers. They've done a tremendous job of educating us and helping us understand the Affordable Care Act, which pages and pages and pages of that, and helping us understand how our plan fits into that Affordable Care Act and what grandfather clause means and all those pieces of it. And so really what we're just trying to do from this point on is try to continuously meet and make sure that we kind of don't get in the same position we were before. So we're constantly keeping ourselves educated, and through the help of Healthcare Solutions and educating our staff, what are the best moves as we move forward to make sure that we have the best plan possible to take care of all of our employees. And so tonight, there are 3 recommendations that we've kind of come up with as a committee that we're going to present to you that we have discussed and voted for. And obviously bring it to you guys, and where you guys will make the vote on May 23rd. So, Paul, do you want me to talk about those, or do you want to talk about those? The first one was, many of us that have children, there's no child visit in our plan to pay for a well-child visit. So we've had a lot of staff that had children that when they take their child to the doctor for a well-child visit, it costs them a lot. They couldn't understand why that wasn't covered. And so, this year as compared to last year, so far, knock on wood, we've had a really good year health-wise. Our staff's been very healthy. We've saved a lot of money in our plan. And so we looked at, we talked about how much would it cost if we put one well-child visit for our staff members, for our families. And the cost of the plan would be $20,000, which is a fraction of the money we've saved this year so far. And so we were proposing to put a recommendation for one well-child visit for our staff members to be covered at 90%.
So would that 20,000 be sort of like a dividend back to the plan then? So it really isn't going to cost the district or employees anymore?
Correct.
To do that? Okay.
Correct. It's basically it's money we've saved, we're putting it back into the plan
All right.
to help our families out.
Well, it will be a planned cost of $20,000.
Correct. It'll cost the plan, but we've
Right.
saved.
But you're kind of getting that back, almost like a dividend this year, because we didn't spend that money, so we're just basically,
Correct.
Okay.
So for example,
Yeah, makes
and we don't
sense.
know this is a fact, but the 1-800-MD, that could be a part of it. We have more people calling 1-800-MD.
Right.
Which is keeping our costs down as far as the plan goes. And so from that money we've saved, we're trying to provide more services.
Right, and I think,
I think that's a great way to do it. Yeah.
One of the Affordable Care Act fees, they had a transitional fee that everyone got saddled with, and I think this year's our last payment of that reduced fee of $30,000, so next year that'll go away. So we have that to help us, next year pay this $20,000 cost, so.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And the second recommendation, I might screw this up, Paul, so you might have to tell me this.
Yep.
This gets a little over my head, talking about reinsurance and how plans work, where plans are worked in a 12-month cycle, but sometimes when month 12 hits, you still have bills out there that need to be paid. And so instead of it affecting you later on, most companies will offer a reinsurance, which will stretch it out to 15 months, so they can still go out and recover some of those bills from doctor's offices, from hospitals. And so next year's plan doesn't get saddled with the previous year's plan's bills. Did I say that right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
And I think Healthcare Solution Group indicated that for self-funded plans, it's a very, very, very common thing that they buy the one with the 3 months extra to collect after the year ends September 30, because to allow for sicknesses and accidents that happen in September and August, if you can't pay for them, the week after they happen, and, that's subject to the hospital and system's billing, then you're not going to be able to cover that with reinsurance. So it's very common to have some additional time after the year ends to actually pay the bill for those late in the year accidents and illnesses that occur.
Do we have any data on how that worked out this last year for us? The cost versus what we were able to get back in premium
I
cost?
don't believe we have data on that. I know the cost was, I think, $35,000 to $40,000, but
I thought it was 65,000 for the reinsurance policy. You can get back to me
It
on
may
it.
be. I'll
I'm
get
just
back to you on
curious.
that.
Yeah, you don't have to have
But
an
one
answer
thing
tonight.
the committee talked about was, I mean, you all may want to discuss.
Well, I was going to say, one of the points that was brought out was the previous year, we had the large claims, the number of large claims were that much higher. This year, we're doing so much better with that, so it's hard to stipulate where that comes in, because that reinsurance, that's where that comes into play with those claims over $2 million. With the additional, if it's a large late claim in the year, those 3 extra months to recoup those claims on that is where the savings is going to come into play for us. And we haven't had that many large claims this year.
Other years you've had 8 or 9 or 10, then drops back to 2, then it's 5. It's just, random.
Well, just overall, is it worth it? Basically, what I want to know, is it worth it for us to do it?
Well, this is a risk management business, and of course, we're an education business, but we're doing self-funded insurance because it cuts out profit and overhead. So it's not that but if you're going to do the business, you have to accept a risk. And some of the committee talked about your homeowners and your auto policy. And Aaron from Healthcare Solution Groups will weigh in here, but some of the committee discussion was, if you went 3 years without a claim on your home or your auto, would you look at the several $1,000s checks you wrote and say, I don't need this, or it's really something to protect you in case it happens. But Aaron, would you want to shed light on reinsurance?
I think that's an excellent scenario to use. It's, as far as a cost perspective, it's hard to measure that until it actually happens. So what the plan's really doing is buying a little bit extra level of insurance to protect the plan in the event that a claim happens at the end of the year. And typically when that's going to happen, it's going to be a big claim. And if you don't have that run-out protection, let's say, for instance, that person's still in the hospital. There's no way we're going to be able to drive to the hospital and get an interim bill and say, hey, bill us even though that person's still in the hospital, so you don't have that protection. So it's monetarily hard to put a dollar on that, because if it's costing $18,000 to $20,000 more of buying insurance, you may not use it for 5, 6, 7 years, but when you use it, it's going to pay for itself, just like homeowners insurance, auto insurance, anything like that. So it's just, again, it's just additional level of protection to protect the plan in the event of a claim that happens at the end of the plan year.
This has been in place for 2 years? This is
our second year.
This is the second year.
And we've
When you guys
had,
made the decision to move to the 1215, was that because you had some experience of not being able to get something covered on 1212, where you've already had that pain?
well, in past years, before the committee was formed, we had it most years. We didn't have it in recent years. I'm not sure why we didn't. Of course, we didn't have a committee either, but I've seen it operate. We've turned in individual claims. When we've had 6 or 7 or 8 claims in a year, I've seen claims come through where this did pay. Now, how many times over the last 20 years? That's kind of the question Jennifer was asking. But I think the risk question, and are you comfortable without it? Effectively, what you're doing without it, if you've got to turn in paid bills by September 30, you're basically, you can ask the doctors, if you know who to ask, who's got bills in the pipeline, you can ask them for bills early August, but you're effectively covering for 10 months, 9.5, 10 months, because the hospitals and the doctors have to issue bills, and then the system has to process to make sure they're accurate, and then they have to be paid. So you're not fully covering, because it's made to pay within September 30. There's no way you can humanly cover 12 months of people going to the doctor or hospital. So you could buy a 12-12 plan, but you're really only covering probably 10 months or so of coverage.
I mean, I understand the concept. I'm just asking, is the cost worth it? That's what I'm asking.
The committee felt it was.
Okay.
The only thing I get confused about on the reinsurance is, if you consistently buy reinsurance, why wouldn't those bills that fall after your deadline then get picked up by the subsequent reinsurance policy.
I think it's because the incurred date has to happen 10/1 to September 30, but Aaron?
Yeah, so the historical that I've seen is that the Joplin School District has always purchased an incurred in 12, paid in 12 contract that renews to an incurred in 12, paid in 12. So you've got a gap in coverage right there. There is reinsurance where you can buy an incurred in 12, paid in 12 that renews to a 24/12, so it goes back and picks up the full 12-month period.
So we're just
before.
talking about that additional premium to incurred in 12, pay in 15.
Exactly.
Need any action, so.
No action, but Paul, maybe you can bring that
Yeah, I
answer
will.
back
I will
to
bring
the-
that back.
To the May one when we do take some action, so we'll.
To the next meeting? Okay, I'll bring that back.
The third
This is the good one.
recommendation?
I think the two guarantees right now is that we're all going to get older and health insurance and health claims and health is going to go up. So to make sure we don't get in the same situation we were before, we've kind of discussed that there's always going to be a need to raise our insurance, 1% to 2% every year, one way or the other, whether it's the district putting in or whether it's the employee side of it. So this year, but from the committee discussion, what we, because we did such a big up last year, is this next year do a 1% raise, and that being paid by the district for that, for our families and for our teachers. And the cost to the budget would be $65,000, and that would also include the cost of the retirement funding. It would make the 80-20 employer split.
And didn't the committee also acknowledge that this was from the education that we've all received last couple of years, that really, the board, I think, has acknowledged this too, that every increase really ought to be split 80-20, but due to, last year was a hardship year with big increases, and this year it's in pretty good shape premium-wise, but if we helped out by just the district making that one payment this year by
Right.
itself, but go back to split arrangements in the future, is that what, some of what the committee was
Correct.
referring to?
If
No?
I may, that amounts, Matt brought up the 65,000, but that's $6 per member per month.
Right.
Sounds a little better.
I think we just felt that we went such a high increase from like 93 to 120 last year, that it negated any raise that people got. Besides that fact, we did do such a big jump that we hated to come back and hammer them again.
Right.
So kind of build up the faith that we're doing the best we can, that kind of thing, so that they have faith in us.
But in the future, let's
Right.
go back to the split arrangement.
Right. And we are at 80-20 still. We're a little bit.
Right.
And we're getting healthier as a district and as a staff, and our plan is getting healthier. So as we get more healthy, we can kind of start having more of those discussions about the 80-20 split and how that operates.
Can I ask you, next year we renegotiate because we'll be in the third year of in July 1, we'll start the third year of our contract with Freeman, right? So next year we'll be renegotiating that. Are we still looking at possibly doing the nurse practitioner thing too and adding that as an option?
We could build that into the.
When we renegotiate?
We could build that in if we want that.
And see, would that help with that would
the-
help with our costs too and keeping them lower, right?
It could.
It'd probably fall, and the committee discussed that last year, right? So it ought
Yes,
to probably come to
discussed
the
it.
committee.
And it would be I think I'd like to go back to the committee and kind of talk to all the different parts of the committee of who would use it, or would you use it, take your children there? Because if we put a well-child visit in, would the employee would they not take their children in, or would they take their children? We don't know how that would work. I'd like to go talk to the committee and see where they feel
Plus-
about that.
plus that
Maybe
phone.
revisit that after we've done a year of 1-800-MD.
Plus that
Yeah, I was just
teledoc.
wondering if that's still on the table, that might be some additional plan
There was a lot of
savings.
positive feedback on it at the time, because I know another district that does have that. And I know a lot of people thought it would be good, so that you could just quickly go over wherever the nurse practitioner was located and get a quick checkup and then get back to school if need be, or get a prescription.
And if it could save our plan some too, and save our employees the cost increase next year too, that'd be.
That goes along with the education, though. I'd like to see the 1-800 utilized more for the plan, but that's not something that's going to be an immediate effect. We've got 1 year under the belt, so to say, and I'm hoping that usage will increase each year.
Yeah, 'cause aren't we, the stuff we got, wasn't it like 12% usage, I think was what it was, what you sent?
Well, we were down, you talking about on wellness?
On the
No,
1-800.
the 1-800 MD.
Utilization
Yeah.
12%, I
Yeah,
think that's
I think
close
that
to
was
right.
about right where it was, so if we can increase that, that would
Right.
be good too. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Good job.
Good job, you guys.
Very good. Dr. Saketa.
Okay, I would like to call Sarah Mwangi and Brett Engel up to kind of give the details of this proposal. In talking with the principals a while back, especially Brett, and talking about students in sending zones and the way things have changed, and I want to say that whatever year it was, 3 or 4 years ago, the district went through a very difficult process to establish boundaries after building new schools and changes, and the best effort was put forward, and it's always a difficult process, but as things change over time, we know that where people live change and enrollment patterns change, and this kind of exercise is probably going to be inevitable from time to time, hopefully not very often. But what we found in looking at the enrollment at West Central and some of the smaller schools compared to some of the larger schools, and what you have is a very large school and a very small school with sending zones or areas that that touch. So when we got to looking at it, we wanted to kind of level out what Irving's enrollment would be or decrease it slightly because of operational needs over time. But we also wanted to look at West Central's and try to increase their enrollment and try to make it more effective and efficient as well. Okay, and I think that's our goal for all of our schools. So what I'd like to do is introduce Brett Engel. He's the principal at West Central. And Sarah Mwangi, she's the principal at Irving. And both have worked very hard on this, as well as Mike Bevis and Dave Pettit and others. And we've kind of talking about the process we went through. We held parent forum, and we had some parents show up. And just like everything that we're trying to do in the district, we want to take as much feedback as we can from other people. And I think every time we sat down and discussed this, the plan got a little bit better, and that's the goal. And it got even better after talking to the parents. So what I would like to do is let Brett and Sarah talk to you a little bit about the plan, go through some slides, and then we want to give you a recommendation. Okay?
All right. Thanks, Dr. Saketa. You kind of covered some of the stuff already, so great job. I'm done. Some of the rationale behind the proposal, if you can bring up some of those numbers for us. West Central, we are currently at 186, which is actually a little misleading. That's including 10 permit students of families that have moved out of our sending zone and are still providing transportation because they want to stay at West Central. So really our attendance zone is only supporting about 176 right now, and that's seems to be dropping the last couple of years. Usually the smaller schools, we'll show you a graph here in a minute, we try to keep them about 12 classrooms. That's basically 2 classes per grade. My secretary, Julie, and I went back about 20 years. We stopped after about 20, and we've supported 12 classrooms at West Central one time in 20 years. So if you know our attendance zone, we have a lot of commercial zoning. It's really hard to support 12 full classrooms. We've had split classes, where we have 3rd and 4th graders in the same room together. We've got 1 5th grade this year that's gotten up to 36 at one point in one classroom. We have 1 kindergarten this year for the first time that Julie could remember. First time we've only had 1 kindergarten classroom. So that kind of worried me a little bit. So, and then Irving, pull up their numbers. They are, even after a move that we've taken some off of them before, they're currently creeping back up to over 550, which is the largest elementary in the district. And then Sarah will tell you a little bit about how the district programming kind of affects those numbers as well.
And as of today, our enrollment is 557, so they continue coming. Irving's enrollment is consistently increasing, and one thing I'm not sure how much you're aware of the district programming that happens, but Irving is a site-based school for our ELL students. It's one of 2 elementaries that services ELL students. So how that works is when a new family moves into the district, wherever they're living, if the child is in need of ELL services, they either attend Irving or they go to Soaring Heights. So it is common for a student, for example, can enroll at Kelsey Norman, and if they're in need of those services, we do provide those site-based, so then they transfer over to Irving. So those numbers can fluctuate for us at any given time. We get students throughout the year for that programming that we provide at Soaring Heights and Irving. The other program we provide is some district special education programming for some of our emotionally disturbed students, as well as some high needs special education in the areas of autism, Down syndrome, some of those classes. So we also house those programs, and as those needs arise, those of you who have had the education experience understand there's a process that we go through to determine those needs. We exhaust all options, least restrictive environment for a child, and as those needs continue, sometimes we do have to transfer students over to our programming that we offer at Irving. So with that, when you look at our enrollment increasing and the programming that we provide operationally is really where Irving is standing as far as reducing our total enrollment size. On the graph here, and I'll let Brett kind of explain, he did a lot of the background work of putting this together. Irving is in the red, so you can see where they were.
Not financially.
Not financially. You can see the population was extremely high earlier in 14. That's when the major rezoning happened to where we moved some students to McKinley and also West Central. And then as you kind of see our trend line, we're creeping back up. And then those are the other larger schools. So we wanted to compare our larger elementaries for you. And then the next slide will show you, Brett can explain the larger schools and how that looks in regards to West Central.
So West Central is the red. These are just the other smaller, and by smaller I mean those 12 classroom schools. We have Columbia in the yellow, Jefferson in the green, Royal Heights, Eastmoreland, and Kelsey Norman. And this is the last 3 years worth of data. As you can see, I mean, there's the smaller schools kind of all together, and then there's West Central. So we're significantly, about 40 to 50 students below the rest of the comparable schools in the district. And as you can see, this has been a trend for at least 3 years now. So yeah, we just, like Carrie said, we said we've got the largest school in the district, we've got the small school in the district. I mean, surely there's some way we can work this out. We have 2 empty classrooms basically in our school that we have space to use. So if you go to the next one, we'll kind of talk to you about that zone. West Central's current zone is in the kind of fluorescent green there. If you look over there, sorry, I've been wanting to use this laser pointer all day. The little strip, that's what we took off a couple of years ago, the fall of 15. That's, just to kind of orient you, that's 7th Street. This is Main. So we took a little bit here a couple of years ago when the apartment complex went to McKinley. So basically all we're doing is we're taking this boundary here at 10th and we're moving it south to 18th. And our eastern boundary will then be Indiana and Illinois there. So that's a proposed move that we talked about. We met with parents and things like that to go over that. So that's what that.
And to give you perspective with our attendance zones, the Irving attendance zone currently where you see in the blue, and we go all the way to Petro. We go all the way out that direction, all the way over to we border with Stapleton off the Jackson area. So our footprint for the Irving attendance zone is extremely, extremely large. Transitioning to Irving this summer, the assistant principal and I drove the attendance boundary, and it took us, just on the outskirts, it took us quite a while to drive the entire attendance boundary. So this would shift that middle population up to West Central, help with their enrollment, and also assist in our operations.
It's basically the old Emerson, the northern part of the old Emerson neighborhood. Emerson was right over there off of 18th. And as you can see, our zone is pretty landlocked, pretty tight. A lot of that, like I said, is commercial. There's not a lot of growth happening in our zone. So yeah, that's another reason we looked at giving us a little bit more real estate to work with while simultaneously taking some pressure off of Irving. So if you go to the next slide, just kind of the things we did. If you could hit that, we met with district officials. Like I said, we worked a lot with Dave Pettit and Mike Bevis in the transportation department. They did a great job helping us out, kind of looking how many students would be affected in that zone. We met with Dr. Saketa, special ed department as well, to look at different options. If you go to the next one. Sarah can kind of tell you about the process she did at Irving with the parents.
Sent letters to the affected students. So in our transportation system, we're able to pull what students fall in that area. So we pulled those students. We chose to mail those letters because elementary, we can't always guarantee that they actually make it home when we send them home with kids. So we chose to mail those letters to the homes, and we kind of gauge how that goes with returned mail, and we didn't receive any returned mail through that process. And invited them to an informational meeting at Irving where we all came together and welcomed parents to come in to let them give us their feedback, get their input, allow them to understand kind of the steps and process that we went through. We had 3 families from Irving attend, and we had 2 West Central families who also attended. And then I had 1 parent who I visited with over the phone and got her feedback through that. And after listening to their input, we came back, Brett and I came to the district leadership meeting and discussed kind of where the parents were, what their feedback was. And the biggest thing, as you would anticipate as a parent, it's going to be hard to swallow having to move your child. So as we kind of worked through that, we entertained the idea of this is really a matter of helping balance some real estate and giving Brett some more opportunity to increase his enrollment as well as help us operationally. And from that, we allowed parents to grandfather into Irving if they chose to provide their own transportation. So a lot of the parents that I kind of visited with, especially those who attended, it was humbling to know from their side that we did listen to their input and we wanted each family to be able to do what was best for them. I have 1 student the family who was affected, and 1 son is in our district programming. So he would have stayed for our district programming, but the little brother would have to go to West Central. And so through listening to their input and getting their feedback, that family is going to be able to stay with us. So we issued another letter and asked them to come into the school and fill out a grandfathering paper to let us know if they planned on staying with us. And I had 9 students total out of the ones who would be affected who were choosing to stay with us. And then the remaining ones would attend West Central.
How many are you looking at? How many kids are we looking at moving?
Right now, after the 9 that are choosing to stay, right now, the current numbers that we have, of course, this is all subject to change as people move in and out, but right now we're looking at 33, and we'll have our projected enrollment up here for next fall here in just a minute. That's our last slide.
So out of 42 kids, 9 of them chose to stay.
Right.
Yes, and some of those students affected in that zone are in district programming, so that's another piece of the puzzle that we have to consider.
So those students we didn't even consider for the move because they would have to stay at Irving anyway. So I think overall, we looked at this section of real estate and we went back 5 years to see how many students were in this neighborhood, and it was anywhere from
Consistently about 50.
Yeah, 45 to 50 students every year that lived in this little block. So we wanted to make sure that we had that number was at least somewhat stable.
So if it's 33 kids you're moving, for Irving, if your enrollment keeps growing, is that really are we going to have to move more kids out next year? Are we doing what needs to be done, or are we just putting a Band-Aid on it for now?
I may say something at this point, for curve that you guys live in, without announcing. I tend to do that. We did talk about the possibility of making help in enrollment with a magnet program. A magnet program meaning that basically people want to send their kids there because...
At West Central, you mean?
Yeah, West Central. So that is still a possibility. And so I think there are some things that the district may want to consider in the future as far as creating a opportunity for people to choice into those types of situations. And I think it's going to create a higher level of rigor with that type of a program. And I know you're looking at one right now. You can't share that with you yet. We don't want to surprise everybody. But anyway, I do think that that's one response to it. The other thing is that as Irving grows, it's not just West Central, it might be some other programs as well, some other sites that you're going to invest with.
Well, I'm wondering too, are we sacrificing the kids do we need to move program too? Because are we giving up kids that live in that neighborhood that should be at Irving? Are we moving them because we have to accommodate the number of permits in or whatever, and so we're having to shift other people around to accommodate our programs. Could we not find a school that's not impacted, and if you're moving kids into your school? And is there, I'm just curious.
And I will
if
say
there's-
one area in the initial stages was looking at something like the ELL program and looking at different options. And that's another layer of conversation, because that's also a group of parents who are on a committee who they went through a process. I wasn't involved with that when they chose Irving and Soaring Heights, of where that programming ended up landing for site-based. So it's definitely a lot of puzzle pieces to that, and I think going back to what Dr. Saketa said about figuring out where we're going to have to constantly keep our thumb on where we are as a community. I think it's safe to say that we want to continue growing as a community, and it's something that we're going to have to constantly be looking at our enrollment and seeing where our needs are and looking at programming if need be.
If I may say, this is very small compared to other districts.
No, I realize that,
Growing
yeah.
districts especially, it's a nightmare. This is really a nice, smooth change, but I think with continuous improvement, always going to have opportunities to adjust. So-
And I'm just wondering, are we looking ahead, or are we just looking at right now?
I think we are,
Yeah.
I think, to me, in this position that I came into, they opened my eyes to start looking ahead, and that's one of the things that we talked about. There are a couple other schools. I think Cecil's an opportunity possibly down the road. They could be getting at capacity, and we certainly may in the next 2 or 3 years need to come back and say, you know what, we're going to let this decision inform maybe 2 or 3 or 4 schools. It may end up into that realm. One of the things that we're looking at too is we got help from Steve, we got help from Matt Harding and Casey Plyler, as well on the middle school students, because the middle school students are affected by this too, because we had South Middle School involved and North Middle School involved.
Right.
So we've extended the same grandfathering opportunity in for those students after consultation with leadership as well as those principals. And so we had extended conversations with them. So if we decide that a year from now, just for example, to make an example, that Cecil is the same situation, we're going to have to come back, and at that point, we may have to start looking a little bit broader, and I think that's where you're going. Or is Kelsey, is an issue at Kelsey? Is Stapleton declining enrollment? I'm just making stuff up here, but, you know, it may influence 3 or 4 schools the next time.
Well, and I'm just using your own against you, measure twice, cut
Yeah,
once,
right.
is all I'm
Well,
saying.
the overall student population is not growing.
Not much.
It's
no.
not, but the distribution of where they're at is
Right.
shifting, and
Right.
that's the question. Is it going to shift more towards west?
One of the concerns I have about long-term is Irving has a lot of property still, potentially, to develop. Now, how quickly that's going to happen, I don't know. But, you know, people ask me all the time, is Joplin ever going to get real big? Well, I've been here in the district 15 years, and I think we fluctuated between 300 and 400 students up and down. And that was before the tornado, when there was all these houses here. A lot more houses than there are probably going to be within the city limits, guessing maybe, in the next 5 or 10 years, because property's bigger, there's less, you know, the houses are a little bit bigger. So it's really hard to tell, but I think Jeff's right. I think that the way people move around town, and hopefully within the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to get a little better handle on the next 10 or 20 as far as moving.
Apartments going in.
Yeah.
And that's in Kelsey Norman. So it's an ongoing breathing beast.
One of the things that Kelsey we're trying to do is work towards getting out of the trailers, or the modulars, if you will. And that apartment complex is complicating
It's
that
kinda
now.
made us go
Because
back.
I think we sat down and talked to Julie about some potential options in the next year or so, and Dave Pettit's been working on them. But because of that apartment complex, that we may need to move in and still use the trailers. So,
And they're opening another complex this summer on that same area.
We have to vote on this.
Yes, there is an action required with it. Any other questions, or you want to go ahead and?
I'll make a motion, we accept the rezoning proposal.
All right, motion by Lori.
I'll second it.
Second by Brent. No further discussion.
I just have one
please.
more question, I'm sorry. So you talked to 3 parents, 3 or 4 parents. Did you offer multiple times for them to come, or just one time? how hard did we reach out to these parents, rather than just sending them a letter and them working shift and not being able to come? And I just want to make sure that they, they understand that that's what is happening, and that they've had a chance to.
Right. We did have the one meeting. We sent the initial letter, and then we just sent follow-up communication with the availability to opening up the conversation. I did have the one parent that I visited with on the phone is going to end up going to West Central after she kind of went through the process, and I encouraged her as well to make sure that parents are welcome to call anytime and give their voice.
She came over and toured at West Central with their son and got to meet him. Another thing that we added, another layer to parent communication, last week I had a team of about 2 or 3 teachers, 3 teams of 2 or 3 teachers, and we took all the addresses that were affected and we made home visits after school one day. We've got a carnival coming up this Friday, and we gave them tickets to the carnival and got to meet some kids, got to meet some parents, told them to stop by West Central. So yeah, we've communicated with parents on both sides, just making sure, and like I said, with the initial meeting, but then again, the letter about the grandfathering paperwork, we tried to reach out to them at multiple points throughout the process.
So you kind of went to them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's a point to make of going on their turf and making sure that they understand that we have the kids' interest at heart and allowing them, the option if they wanted to stay and provide their transportation
And the
versus
parents we talked
Brett
to,
welcoming
we
them to West
got
Central.
great feedback from them as we went into the neighborhood and got to meet
I mean,
some.
I visited your school. It's a great school.
Yeah,
There shouldn't be a reason anyone wouldn't want to go
Absolutely.
there. I'm just asking
Yeah.
what we've done
Right.
to communicate what's going on. So,
Okay, motion by Lori, second by Brett. Please vote.
yes.
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 Yes, that motion passes.
Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate it. Jeff?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
May I be excused? I don't know what the process is, but I don't want to miss my daughter's.
Yeah, go.
The rest of
Go
it.
ahead. Got one last thing, the E-rate wireless access points.
Yes, we would like to expand a better product and an outdated product and make sure that we're using E-rate funds efficiently. E-rate, we pay 20%, and the E-rate funding comes out in at 80, and Eric can explain, but essentially, we want to make sure that we update several of our elementary schools with bandwidth and make sure that we don't have aging equipment in the buildings. With the testing that we're doing and the fact that our elementary kids are using technology more and more all the time for varied reasons, all good educational reasons to supplement what they're doing in a typical classroom, or what we all remember as a typical classroom. We want to make sure that we get that right and continue to move ahead. Eric, is there anything else you'd like to add there?
It's mainly just replacing the access points, because the current ones, the reason we see problems with, they only allow 10 to 15 individuals on it at a time. And our model is every other classroom. So if you got 2 classrooms testing and they're using that one access point, that's where we start to run into problems. So replacing with new access points allows up to 60 times on the front time.
And I want to say, I want to give Eric and his team a hand. When we sat down and looked at things, Eric, when we set goals in Eric's department, one of his main goals was to improve, the connectivity for all the schools. And I can say this year has been much better. I think our principals would agree with that are here. And Eric and his team went out and they looked at different kinds of solutions to make sure that where we might test on this hallway, so we'll improve the bandwidth in this area, the connectivity in this area, and we would move kids around a little bit. And that's helped a little bit, but at the same time, whether we're testing or not, we need to have better connectivity all the way throughout the building. So they've done a good job of working with what we've had up to this point.
There's no questions.
I have a question. Do we have the money in the budget to do it?
It's in my capital.
For cap outlay for 17-18.
Okay, so this will be done next year.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the E-rate wireless.
So moved.
Motion by Lori,
I'll second.
second by Jennifer. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, that motion passes. Okay. Thank you. All right, last item, pluses and deltas. What can we change? We're here a little bit long, that's it, that's kind of the delta.
And you went 20 minutes too long.
We did, but we did talk a lot about
And important stuff to talk about.
a topic that's going to be around for a while.
Well, one thing I'd like to mention too before we go is tomorrow we're having a retirement luncheon.
That's on my list too.
Oh, okay, well, I'll let you talk about it.
All right.
I'll let you talk.
One of the pluses is each group, committee, team that we got put together has got different sets of people from the community, from the school, from the classroom, to the students, to teachers, to the staff, to the bus barn. And I really like that we've got a lot of voices coming in, and it's not the same few voices speaking at every opportunity. So I really like that. I think that's good that we share how many different voices we hear, and not just that we're hearing the same ones over and over. That's a plus.
I think the plus that I hear, by the way, if I may say, Brett and Sarah's seeking out the feedback and input and all that kind of stuff. Really very, very powerful. Good stuff. Good process. Very good process. So I think that was helpful. I think a lot of process going on to support your statement. So.
Good. All right. I will remind the board members that tomorrow at noon, right out here, is the retirement luncheon. If you're available, feel free to come and join for lunch. All right. Nothing further. I'll make a motion that we close.
I'll second it.
And please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, we're adjourned.
I think we have
Thank you,
very
guys.
solid.
I'm looking at it.